it all. And spiritualizing states of consciousness within these souls, this is where we can really open up and have sparks of truth pop in left and right. This is where sometimes we just have to surrender and ask the questions. What would you have me know, Source? Show me the deepest levels of truth I can understand. Show me how all truth interrelates to everything else. So I just wanted to, address the Saturn retrogrades again from a more overview perspective. I do have some of the planetary cycles here that I'm going to move into now, and so as we look at them, especially the slower moving outer, well, no, I shouldn't say that, all the planets except for the sun and the moon, we have retrograde cycles. We have retrograde cycles of Saturn, the outer planets, the inner planets, everything has that interrelating retrograde cycles in just wanting to help us expose those limitations of truth. And are we going to, again, are we going to pull back into Saturn defensiveness? Or can we take a deep breath and just be open and ask, what am I to learn here? And so when we start to move into these cycles, of course, the deepest cycle that we typically look at, and some of this I went over a little bit in the 2015 forecast, so if you attended that, you might recognize some of these slides, but I went beyond just 2015 here because in this particular webinar, we're going to look at Saturn over the next 3 years, all the way through its cycle through Sagittarius. And I also dipped in to show you some of the Saturn conjunctions, the cycles with these outer planets. So you might be familiar with the fact that as Saturn retrogrades back into Scorpio here for 3 months, it's going to make these waning semi-squares to Pluto. And you can see your dates and your degrees here on your computer. And then once we get past the waning semi-squares, Saturn makes one waning semi-sextile to Pluto. That means it's gotten within 30 degrees of cycling all around and catching up to Pluto. And as you can see on your screen here, we can actually look at Saturn moving through Scorpio, Sagittarius, and it's going to have one conjunction to Pluto in 2020, which is about 5 years away. The Saturn-Pluto cycle is a 33-year cycle. And the last, I didn't get the last cycle on here, and I don't know if I'm going to have that typically in my head. Let's see if I can do this with my little calculator fast enough. Okay. And so that, okay, I got to wait for the calculator to load up. I'll move on. We won't worry about that detail. But as we've spoken many times, ever since Saturn hit the last quarter squares with Pluto in 2010, when Saturn was in Libra, it's about the structure of reality and the structure of consciousness within the soul, individually and collectively, having to surrender on deeper and deeper levels. In the outer world, it literally means structures don't function anymore. Personally, it works that way as well, but it also means that the soul itself and how it's orientated consciously in this world is not functioning. It's having to surrender to deeper understandings. It's having to surrender to what it looks at as reality changing. Now, this is a slide we looked at in another class. Saturn and Pluto, as they make these waning semi-squares, they've been in a mutual reception with each other for since 2012 when Saturn moved into Scorpio. And this waning semi-square is balsamic phase. Balsamic phase is surrendering to source energy, and it's finishing up karma. So we're also going to be feeling that between this Saturn, these Saturn-Pluto aspects here over the next 3 years. And Saturn in Sag, we want to be asking, what's the karma in my world that my soul still needs to address? And as I said earlier, surrendering control, surrendering old realities. The degree to which we resist is the degree to which we could have cataclysms in our physical world, Pluto and Capricorn. And this is a death and rebirth time period. We can be coming to deeper understandings and we're wanting to move forward, but we find ourselves in structures of reality whereby we've got careers, we've got relationships, they're not working, but we can't just throw them away. We've got to walk through finishing them up somehow, some way. Sometimes it'll come to an actual ending. Sometimes it's going to be our responsibility to walk through it rather than run away. Now, all the way through this, all the way through balsamic phase, as Saturn's in this last 45-degree relationship with Pluto the next 5 years, pay attention to the future-orientated messages, because you're going to get some ideas of how you do want to structure things differently, how you do want to reach out there and create in your world. And so it's a balance between, okay, what am I responsible for getting done in my world, in my work, in my career, in my relationships, intimately, family, whoever. What's my role, and how do I continue to fulfill whatever I feel is mine to do, especially as I deepen my understandings of that Saturn and Sag. And as you are working towards that in a responsible way, then you will see a corresponding freedom to move forward even before Saturn becomes new phase to Pluto. So just as two planets are new phase to each other and sometimes will get pulled back into the past for security, if we are addressing karma, Saturn, on a soul level, Pluto, if we're addressing our karma, we can free ourselves up before the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. So this is an important one to recognize and realize, and that's the wisdom that Sag wants to bring through. That's the intuitive hits that we can get on, this is mine to do, and sometimes this is not mine to do. If we have too much Saturn and we have a tendency to be overly responsible, sometimes it's going to be making peace with not doing it and allowing someone else to step up to the plate and do what they need to do in their Saturn-Pluto responsibilities. That can be a tough one with Saturn balsamic Pluto, because we can, there are those souls who do tend to be over responsible, and especially if it comes to your children. And if you're always, for instance, wanting to save the child, or taking on and always being responsible for the child's when they make mistakes, then they don't have their Saturnian learning curve either. So there's going to be a real balance here on what's my personal karma on a soul level that I still need to finish up and be responsible for, and what are other souls' personal karma that they need to be responsible for. And I've got to just step back and allow them to learn their own lessons, to do their own things. This is where you can ask for the wisdom of Saturn and Sag to come help on those levels. And of course, you can see how this is all going to play out on a collective social level as well. And because the collective is so consensus orientated, there's a real resistance to letting go of old structures. And therefore, chances are there's some real big cataclysms that can come in various ways, from the terrorism outbursts we've seen in France recently to financial structures collapsing, to governments really having scandals or things happening that shake it up. Now, here is what I had said individually on these waning squares. Of course, you'll look where Pluto and Cap is transiting by house. It's going to bring up multiple lifetimes of old structure and patterns. This is going to be where we're clinging to security, where we want to have control. And the Saturn Scorpio transit house and Saturn Sag house, as it's going back and forth between Sag Scorpio. This is where we've got to have a deeper understanding. This is the understandings of what we're responsible for and what we're not responsible for that I just spoke about, and therefore how we can change the old structures and old realities of the transiting Pluto house. And as I said before, you take this one step deeper. Where's natal Pluto? Where's natal Saturn? What's the phasal relationship? What's the aspect between natal Pluto and Saturn? That's how your soul came in to structure consciousness in this lifetime. Compare that and see how this transit is affecting the natal Saturn and Pluto. These are going to be the deepest areas where reality is changing for you on an individual soul level. And of course, as I said, we can experience loss, we can experience upsets, we can have financial issues, career issues. Scorpio, we can have those revisiting of relationship issues one more time. And that last item, the inner messages and dreams, again, this is because it's balsamic phase between these two. And balsamic phase includes intuition on its deepest levels. It includes the communion with Source. It includes the dream worlds. So we could have dreams of what we need to let go of in our life by way of structure. And we could have dreams about how we're supposed to be opening up and doing it differently. And so, moving